Welcome, Tom. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too, buddy. How you doing?
Good. You sound good. You look good.
Thanks. I'll take it.
You sound like Darth Vader. I got an echo.
Did you mute your speakers on that side? Mute your laptop speakers. There you go.
All right. Yeah. It seems good, man. All is well today.
Nice. Good stuff.
Let's get some. Well, we'll ping some people. Let's see. I'll add some topics here on the top. We'll invite a few people up to come and hang out with us. That's what we do. So
Cool.
See how I add topics. Let's put pin link, hand raising.
I'm going to go ahead and start pinging some folks in.
Okay. And I'll drink my hot tea for a minute. I like that your dog's in the background today.
There you go. Yeah, that's one of them. The other two are somewhere else, somewhere in the house. She's the youngest. She's the puppy, and she heard me say puppy. That's what she's 3 years old, but we still call her puppy. But yeah, she's the most codependent of the three of them. So the other two will just, like they're both laying downstairs on their dog beds, just hanging out. And she will be in whatever room I'm in. So unless the door is closed to the office where I am right now, she'll be in here with me.
I like it.
Yeah, she's a little codependent. But she's a sweetheart. She's a good pup. So, and the other two are good pups too. They're just a little bit more independent.
Hey, Carrie's around. Hey,
All right.
We're just kicking it off here today. We're drinking our hot tea. We're looking at Tom's dogs in the background. Well, one dog, the pup. That's what he said.
I've got some hydration going on. Little mango chili element electrolyte drink because I just did like a 45-minute row, and then probably going to go for a swim after this.
So Tom's been encouraging me to step out of my comfort zone and things like that, and so I started open water swimming this summer, and I blame Tom partially. I blame Tom, the Steelers, and a lot of other things on this hoarse voice I have. It's more hoarse than usual.
I was going to say, I feel like the Steelers probably deserve a little bit more of the blame than I do.
Well, and I was at a Pirate game, and it was the bottom of the ninth, and it was the fourth quarter at the same time, and we were fortunate enough to have a TV there that was showing the Steelers game. So a lot of fans were watching the Pirate game and getting psyched up, but there'd be times where like the pitcher was pitching, and we'd start screaming. Me and my son were like, "Yeah!" and all these other people that were watching the Steelers were going insane, and the fans were looking around like, "What are these guys? There's nothing going on in the game right now."
What are they screaming about? I don't understand.
My son said he couldn't handle all these emotions. Carrie, it is nice to see you. What do you got going on? Did you just release a book, Carrie? Are you writing a book? What's going on?
Hi, guys. I've written so many books since I started this, and I can't believe I haven't had a conversation with you about this, which is crazy. I have been offered a couple of deals, and I don't know. One offer was 15%. That's, I guess, standard, and I did a book in 2011 with my dad, and so we still pay to house some of those books. I'm fully aware of the cost on the back end, and I don't really want to be a publishing house, and I don't want to be in charge of the distribution and all of that. But the longer I wait on publishing it, the more frustrating I get. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so tell us more. I want to know, dig in deeper about this.
Well, everyone says you should self-publish. How did you find Bobby, and how did that work?
Bobby Shanks, undateable. He's incredible. So here's the thing about self-publishing. I love it if you're good at it, if you have marketing skills, if you have a team to do your editing, if you have people that can design book covers for you and all kinds of stuff like that, more power to you. Sometimes self-publishing, though, can be your biggest risk. Like, let's say Tom. Tom is this Emmy nominated, wonderful storyteller who has made quite a career in video. People expect a certain level of professionalism from Tom. If Tom all of a sudden released a book with thousands of misspellings, which thousands is, if you read a 100,000 word book or 50,000 words, thousands is, not that. It's a lot. But I'm saying if you tried to do it on your own, yeah, that's realistic. So sometimes, Carrie, well, you could maybe I own all my rights if I self-publish it, but is it too risky? And that's, so you asked about Bobby. I run a hybrid publishing company, traditional publishing. Depends on, we offer different packages to everybody. It just depends on their needs at the time. And that is how me and Bobby came about. We only do inspiration and motivation, and Bobby's book, Undateable, was about giving singles the power to make whatever choice they wanted to, whether that was be single, whether that was play the field, or whether that was get yourself in a committed relationship. So let's continue down this path because I'm interested. So what? So the 15% deal that somebody offered you, meaning they're going to pay all the costs and they take 15% on every book.
No, I would only get 15%.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'm like, that's not, again, like you said, with the standard. So when I do something, whether it's a speaking engagement or a campaign or a cover or my podcast, my brand is my brand, and my expertise is making that cover look perfect. It's just like I don't need to hire a company that tests the cover to see how well it's going to be received. Like that's where I did that for 30 years, and these types of companies didn't even exist. I just had that skill set being a photographer, and so I like what you did for Bobby, and I read Bobby's book and it was great. And I think I could do something. I know I have like 4 books that I've written, so I'd like to hear more about what this hybrid offer sounds like.
And I'd love to talk to you about it, and we can talk off this. But okay, so I'm going to give Tom. This is something I don't always do. I'm going to talk straight publishing for everybody here because the room is a publishing thing. So this is something to know. There's self-publishing. You do it 100% yourself. You make every decision. You make every choice. You own all your rights. There is traditional, where you find Simon and Schuster, and maybe they're looking for a book right now on cannabis or on 222 or on people named Tom. And maybe when you find a traditional publisher, they give you some money up front. When they give you some money up front, there might be expectations as well, meaning, well, we get 60% of all your royalties. Is the money up front worth giving up that ownership? So one of my first deals I signed with a traditional publisher, and they are still trying to get me to buy the rights off of them. I didn't think they did a great job. They're still trying to get me to buy the rights off of them for that book for about $10,000. I don't even want the book. I put retired on my website years ago. I just want everybody to forget about that book because it was so underdeveloped and things like that. And they keep hitting me up for that $10,000. And I gave up a large percentage of my royalties. I made 25 cents on a book when somebody else made a hell of a lot more. It sucked. But there are times where, hey, maybe they're looking for a book on 222 about clean water right now, and they're willing to pay you 50 grand up front. It's always worth I believe it's always worth sending query letters. Spend 3 months sending query letters. Spend 6 months sending out query letters and see if people are looking for that subject. If they're not, okay, at least you understand the business, what's going on right now in the market, and then you can make those other choices and see what's best for you. And then the final one is a hybrid model. That's where it is basically a combination where somebody finds out the services you need. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's ghostwriting, maybe it's printing, maybe it's editing, or the more in depth you get. In the old day, they called that vanity because there's a lot of bad guys out there in that field that are trying to take rights, that are trying to upcharge you on all the books and things like that. So if you're going to go down that path, you really need to do your own. Now, Tom, I've talked, this leads us into what you wanted to talk about today, and it's a perfect segue. It was asking for help. And here we go, right? There's a point of everything where maybe I should ask for help. And Tom, lead us down that path. Thank you.
Yeah, it was just something that popped into my head yesterday, Dom. I was, thinking about, because I was talking about, and I'm going to reach out to a former colleague slash employer for some help or some guidance, maybe a little bit of mentorship on a particular project. And I see some alignment between the work that they do and the work that I do on the B2B side. And I thought, hey, they're further along in the process. They're working at a larger scale than I am. Let me reach out to them. Let me kind of maybe, see if I can get a little bit of guidance and maybe see if there's some synergy for us to work together again. We had a great relationship when I worked for this company years ago. And yeah, so, wanted to reach out and was thinking about who to reach out at that company to, how to sort of approach that. And it came to my head, like, it's something that I've struggled with my whole professional life. And probably from the time I was a kid too. I'm very sort of independent. I pride myself on my independence, on my ability to figure things out, to problem solve, and to sort of overcome obstacles. But the reality is that, and I know this is true, that in life, very often you're better off just asking someone else for help than you are trying to figure out how to do it on your own, right? That it's a faster, better way to get past an obstacle or overcome a hurdle than it is to try to figure everything out on your own in a vacuum from scratch. Right. And so, yeah. So, as I was thinking about it for myself yesterday, I was like, well, how do you do that? Like, what are good ways to approach someone to ask for help? And I think one of the things that popped into my head was, it's along the lines of, like, flattery will get you everywhere. Right. And if you approach somebody from the perspective of, look, you guys are experts at this, you've achieved amazing things doing this, I would love to ask you some questions and learn about your process and try to better understand the expertise you've developed in this area. Can I buy you a cup of coffee, or whatever the case may be, and ask you some questions? Is that okay? Like, that just popped into my head as, like, one approach, but I was curious to see what you thought. I was curious to see what some of the other people in our community here think about good ways to approach asking someone for help or mentorship, particularly in the space I'm thinking of is in business, right? So how do you ask somebody for help in business? How about that for a question?
I think that's a good conversation starter. Let's hit the floor here and go. Carrie, Dr. Tachi, Joyce, Charles, what do you think?
I think it's really hard to ask for help, but I think if you look at it as a way, like, how can I? There's always something I can offer back. And I'm willing to. and I'm super appreciative, and I'm loyal, and I will return the favor. And I think collaboration is key, and we'll rise together. And I think the way you say it, and the approach, and how you ask for help matters. So that's my feedback on this conversation. I think it's going to be a good one though today. Thanks.
Dr. Tachi, Joyce, Charles, asking for help. You got any thoughts on that? Where do you go? How do you do it? How quickly should you do it? Is there a point where, hey man, it's too soon? Like asking somebody to move. It's too soon. You can't ask me these questions yet. What are your thoughts on this? Charles, go on.
Yeah. Is it too soon? And asking for help, right? So my approach has been, let me actually do a physical thing that others can relate to, and then have confidence in helping expand, right? And that, so I figured, so that's where I spent my time. I thought it was too soon to ask for help, right? And I know others is kind of, this is the introduction, and I appreciate and I'm honored to be in the room and moderate, because I'm at that stage now where I am asking for help, and not just saying help. What I want is participation, right? And I mean, there's lots of different ways to help, and people have their own way of doing it and their own timing, and trying to put this whole thing together, and actually measuring the things that come together. It's now on okay, where are those human resources to expand? And that's why I'm starting the podcast, one of the reasons, and asking for help from like community radio stations, from community television stations, to actually make news, because we're collectively taking action. So now's that time to spread. So thanks for being in the room, and I appreciate it. This is Charles in Tampa, Florida.
Charles in Tampa. I've been to Tampa. I love the water down there. Good times. I think I'm an East Coaster with my waves. Okay, if you've ever been to Florida, do you like East Coast Florida waves or the Gulf Florida waves? Which water do you want? Anybody? This is what I want to know about. No.
Well, the great thing about Florida is you can see the sunrise, right, and surf the East Coast, and drive across 2.5 hours and do the same on the West Coast for sunset. So that's the nice thing about the peninsula.
Good point.
You may get chased across by a hurricane, so you never know.
It might just blow you across. There you go. Hey, okay, Joyce, this is Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. I think we switch those words around sometimes, so next week it could be the reverse. But we talk about all things Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. Joyce, what's your thoughts on all this?
Thanks for having me up. First, Carrie, I'm in Massachusetts. I'm in Cambridge. I am the creator and host of a podcast about women in cannabis. I would love to connect with you if you just like asking for help. I'm a woman of a certain age. I think we're expected to do everything ourselves. We're just supposed to lean in. Sheryl Sandberg told us to do that, and we kind of felt like everything was on our shoulders. So it is a bit of a I don't know, it is a little hard for me, but I am finding that, this is the only way I'm going to be able to build this, and be part of this industry is by building community, and part of that is authenticity and, transparency about what I do and do not know, and how I can offer help, what value I can add, and how I can, what assets or assistance I need from others. So I think that's kind of where I am on this. So thanks for the topic.
I like that. Go on, Carrie. Go on.
Sorry, I just wanted to say hello to her and welcome her. And I have to say this about podcasting. If you look up, so I'm listed as like number 8 as dating podcasts, and I look at the list and it's like, hey, Tokyo, New York, LA, New York, and it's like no, and then there's me, Massachusetts. So I feel like I don't know if Boston's not woke or what is going on, but I can't really find a lot of podcasters in Massachusetts. So this is exciting, and I would love to speak offline. But yeah, I mean, see the simple ask, like, I'm in the same area. Could we collaborate? And that's great. And Clubhouse pushes you to do that. So I just wanted to say that. Thanks.
Good stuff. And I feel on this question, the longer that I can give before I make the ask. I met a guy the other day where we were doing some filming, and all of a sudden an aunt or somebody hooked him up to this huge director in Hollywood. And the guy tells me, we're sitting beside each other, and he's like, well, I haven't reached out yet, but my aunt hooked me up. She like entered the conversation and said, you need to meet Steve. He's great. You need to meet this person, like warm intro. And he hadn't reached out. And that's the world he wanted to get into. And I'm like, he's telling me about it. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You need to quit talking to me right now, and I'll help you write the email that you're going to write to this guy. Love your work, kicks ass. I'd be honored to pick your brain, this kind of thing. But to just pass up that opportunity, I couldn't believe it. Make the ask. Dr. Tachi, what do you think about all this?
Good morning, everyone. 100% on what everyone said. I think that, like you were saying, Dominic, taking the time, like before you make the ask, to not always be the person that's making the ask, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're always asking and never giving back, that's not helpful. So what I tend to do, and this is probably because of, and I think we all maybe had a bit of this when you go, and I've said this before, your mother told you when you go to somebody's house, don't ask for anything and act like you've never seen food in life before. So you learn very quickly to subsist on your own when it comes to things, and that carries over into other things. And sometimes that's good, but sometimes that's bad because then you end up not knowing how to ask for help. But the thing is, I've seen recently in something in waiting for, saving up my asks, I've been able to get something pretty big, a big ask out of people because I'm not always asking them for things. And I made it, as everybody was saying, made it a thing where it's a collaboration where they would benefit as well. So it's not just about me asking for something. It's about how can I help you as well. And I love that type of thing where people, they'll ask me for something and then they're like, all right, now what do you need? How can I help you? So making it truly a symbiotic relationship when you do ask for things, that it should not just be about you. That's what I think.
I 100% agree with you there, Dr. Tachi. But here's I'm gonna push a little bit further on this, right? So, like, how do you do that? What are some ways that maybe you've done that in the past, or if anybody in the room's got stories of how they've done this in the past? Like, when you're asking up, like when you're asking somebody who is much further along in the process than you, much more successful than you, when you're really asking someone for like mentorship or guidance, right? Rather than like a favor, right? So Dominick said, like, how soon can you ask somebody to help you move? Like, that's not what I'm talking about. And we could have a separate conversation about that, about what kind of friendship you have to have in order to ask someone to help you move, which I think has to be a really close friendship, right? But what I'm talking about is really looking for mentorship or guidance, right, from somebody who has already sort of worn that path that you're trying to walk down yourself. So, like, what are some strategies that you can use in that case where you're really sort of asking up, you're like, and you may not have a lot to offer that person, right? So it's not like it's not necessarily a trade amongst, colleagues so much as is, you're asking someone for mentorship or guidance. What do you think?
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So in this case, Mario Armstrong, if you don't know Mario, you need to be following him because he's absolutely amazing when it comes to brand partnerships and sponsorships. He's here on Clubhouse and he does a bunch of things. So he has this thing that I really love called 3 asks. So when you're looking for something, you have your major ask, which is you want this person to mentor you, or maybe you're this person is a film person and you want to know if you can follow them and shadow them on set one day, right? Maybe that's your big ask. But then you have two smaller asks, right, that you go through before you get to the big ask, so that you're still connected with them in some sort of way and still get that kind of maybe relationship that you're seeking for, but maybe it's not as time intensive as shadowing them for a day or whatever else your ask is. So if you ask things, if you have three asks, small, a mid, and then your big ask, that's helpful. So I like to use that formula when it comes to things.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And like behaviorally, it kind of you're establishing, because the likelihood is they're going to say yes to the small ask, right? So you're kind of like, you're setting a baseline of like, you're establishing a relationship where you ask them for guidance or a little bit of help and they say yes. And then you ask for a little bit more help and they say yes again because they've already said yes once. It's always easier to get someone to say yes again once they've said yes once, right? And so that makes a ton of sense. I appreciate that. That sounds like a really solid strategy. Who else? Joyce, out of curiosity, what's your strategy, or do you have any stories about asking for help, asking for mentorship, asking for guidance, professionally or personally?
I feel like these days I'm always asking for help. You know, I do a podcast in my daughter's bedroom, and I'm a lawyer by training, and I didn't know how to do any of this. And if I didn't ask for help, I would just be spinning my wheels. So I don't know. It's humility. It's this idea that I have to know that I don't know everything. I think it's almost this idea of, I talk a lot about women leadership. You know, I was in the world where I couldn't admit that I didn't know stuff. Like that used to be the world I lived in. And now they're talking about authenticity and vulnerability. And I'm like, I can admit I don't know stuff and ask for help, and people think that's great. I think that's partly, I mean, that's kind of a mindset, but yeah, I just, I don't know. It's conversations, it's relationships. I think that's what we've learned from the pandemic, is like how important it is for these relationships to have connections. And we're all in this together. I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, I just feel like I'm always asking for help these days. That's where I am.
Hey, Tom, one of the questions I was thinking about, do you believe that we don't have something to offer the person who's higher up than you?
It's not that I believe we don't have something to offer, but then like, what do you offer somebody who who is, if you're asking for guidance on how to do something, right? What do you offer them in return when they're already, miles down the road ahead of you in their career, right? Like when you're talking about a professional relationship, like I genuinely don't know where to start offering or what to start with, like in trying to offer something to that person, right? Like I'm talking about somebody running, the person I'm specifically talking about is somebody who runs a, I don't know how many multi-million dollar company that, has done work with, some of the biggest brands in the world, who has produced network television, et cetera, et cetera. Like this is somebody who used to be my boss, right? That I'm talking about asking for some mentorship from. So I don't even know, I wouldn't even know where to start. Like, what do I offer that person? Right? What do I offer them when they're so far ahead of me professionally?
Why do you have to offer them anything?
Well, I was trying to answer Dominick's question. That was his question was do you think you have nothing to offer? And I said, I don't.
So where are you going with that, Swifty? Brian P. Swift, go on.
Well, I mean, whenever you ask anybody for help, they ought, I mean, one, it's a compliment. Two, they are in a better position than you. If I ask somebody to help me work out, it's because usually they have some more knowledge than I do. And I believe that they can help me. If you as a business professional ask somebody for marketing help, it's because you believe they have a stronger sense of marketing than you do. But maybe you have a stronger sense of in a bigger network where that law of reciprocity doesn't have to take place right away. You may be a benefit to them a year down the road, 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road. I don't think there has to be this sense of I owe them immediately. In a way, I guess, man, I had to ask a lot of people for help being in a wheelchair, and I never felt like I never had anything to offer them back in some way, shape, or form. I didn't know what it was always, but I guess I just had faith that one day they'd come to me, and they knew they could come to me because I offered that up for if they ever needed something and I could help them in a certain way. And I just think that happens at different times. Quick story. So my son works for ComEd. He's a lineman, and he lives in a real neat little homey town that's very close. And he met a guy at the Sportsman's Club, just by accident. And this guy owns 3 of the largest car dealerships, extremely wealthy, owns lots of land, and is in a status, I guess, if you look at wealth and business knowledge, maybe far beyond that of my kid, who's only 27. But funny thing is, when the storm blows by and his 2 out of his 3 car dealerships go dark, he ends up calling my son, who works at ComEd. And my son finds a way to get his lights on quicker than anybody else in those areas. They don't have the same backgrounds. They're very different, but yet my kid reached out and did what he could do. This guy couldn't even attempt to do what Spence does. Down the road, about a year later, my daughter needs a car. Spence reaches out to this guy, tells him what she's looking for. He finds it, gives her a great deal. I mean, things don't always work out the same way. Giving is never 50-50, and it's never at the same time. I guess I just don't struggle with what could I possibly offer somebody, because I believe there will be something in some point in time. I'm complete.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate your angle on it, and it's just another take on, well, you are given something, and how fast does it need to happen, right? Like when we start this process, this is what I think about. Like I might have reached out to somebody, and hey, that's pretty cool what you're doing there. Love what you're doing. Another, hey, good post. Consume their content, watch their videos, maybe attended their event. And then someday I might say to them, message, they reply. And then all of a sudden one day I ask them, hey, what do you think about this, or this? And that's pretty much my process with it. I try to give, really delve into their content, what they're about, and then ask at some point. But if I don't know that person at all, that would be really tough. But go on, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, like, it's also a very different thing, I think, if, I was asking somebody for help in an area where I didn't already have a certain level of expertise, right? So it's like, to go back to what, to what Brian was talking about, like it would be, like I'm not asking somebody like you, Dominick, for your expertise in publishing. I'm asking somebody who has slightly different expertise to mine, right? And is very well established in production for some mentorship in my own field. Right. So like, I think that's why I was saying, like, I struggle, like, and I don't necessarily, I agree with Brian. Like, I don't feel like I have to approach this conversation by saying, here's what I can do for you. Now, can you please help me with this? Right. Like, I don't feel like it has to be tit for tat, because I do have a relationship, and we have a mutual, like, respect, and we like each other, and we've worked together in the past. We've tried to work together since then. Like there's a rapport already built, right? So I don't feel like I have to offer right away. But in thinking about it, like I don't know that I have something to offer. Like I can't necessarily think of something off the top of my head that they need that I can provide them. That doesn't mean that that thing doesn't exist, but I can't think of it. So like, if I can't think of it, I definitely can't offer it. Right. That was kind of what I was saying. But
No, and I'm
yeah,
just my pushback here, and why I push back on this is to think that every person in this whole universe doesn't want some admiration, doesn't want some positive vibes, doesn't want a compliment. That's all. So I'm saying that's rudimentary, but genuine, authentic, because you are in the same industry, you understand the intricacies of why, when I ask a camera guy, when you're editing, how are you doing your splits? And the guy says, well, because I've used Adobe Premiere and I suck at it. And I wanted to know, well, your splits are clean. How are you doing it? And
what's a split?
well, so a cut.
Okay.
A cut. When I'm cutting, and his are different than mine. What are you doing? Okay, well, here I'm using the voice. I'm keeping the voice going, but I'm not keeping the video going. Like, just more intricate than I needed, just a little bit. So to ask one more question that they knew, hey, this guy at least knows a little about what he's talking about, and realizes I'm coming to Tom because Tom can. I'm not going to waste his time and ask him for 3 hours, but I do ask Tom about what goggles I should wear when I'm swimming in the pond. Okay, hold on here. Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. We are going to meet Simon because I missed him last week. Simon, I apologize. I suck personally, so don't hold it against me. But sometimes I'm scrolling through faces on here. I can't figure it all out. We're live streaming and stuff like that. So Simon, we're talking about asking for help. Anytime somebody drops in and wants to share a tip or ask a question, we'd love to have you. And you have a picture of the beautiful queen as your profile, so thanks for that as well. So go on, Simon.
Thanks, Dominic. I am not one to hold grudges because they sit in the body and they become dis-ease, which is not nice. So yes, I'm appearing as Majesty Queen Elizabeth II at the moment because I am mourning in my country, so I'll be going hopefully to see her in the next couple of days. Well, not her, if I can even get near the where she's lying in state currently. But anyway, that's another topic, not for this room. Yeah, asking for help. Well, I always like to give a bit of context to backgrounds and how I now ask for help. And probably if I hadn't have asked for help, I wouldn't be on this planet because I manage and have done for over 4 decades complicated mental illness around trauma. I have dual diagnosis, and I carry no shame now of coming into rooms and saying that I have a mental illness because, if people have physical illnesses, do they go, oh, I don't have a physical illness? Some may not, kind of thing. But what happened in my backgrounds and serving in the military for 12 years kind of taught me all of this rubbish belief system to never ask for help, that it was a weakness to ask for help. And certainly, I'll only speak for myself. I don't ever speak for other people. But I was absolutely taught for many decades not to speak up, not to ask for help, or any of those things whatsoever. And again, it nearly killed me because I've survived suicide twice, and that was because I wasn't asking for help. It wasn't that I didn't want to ask for help, by the way. It was because I didn't know. I didn't know what asking for help was or what it looked like. Because again, every time when I used to ask for help, it was, you're man up, you're strong, you're a man. You've been in the military, you run marathons, to which is all absolute rubbish. Because for me, there's no difference in what I am or what my job description used to be. I am vulnerable, like many people, and so I've learned to reach out and ask for help. However, it comes with a caveat of reaching out and asking the correct people for help, because I've often asked some of the wrong people. I think they're called narcissists and all these kind of wonderful, strange people in life. And the other thing as well is, I don't mind not knowing everything. It's like, I've taught social media on and off for 15 years and I've done podcasts for, I don't know, maybe a decade if relating it to the topic. And kind of because I was in that difficult place, I used to go into places and think, oh, don't admit that you don't know anything, because again, that could be seen as a weakness. Again, for me, that's absolute rubbish. When I hear people in rooms, I've heard Tom speak a couple of times, I actually want to know that people, business owners, don't have all the knowledge and that can accept help, because for me, that's a strong leader. Strong leaders that I look to, me being one of those people, are the ones that can accept whatever you want to call it, that they don't have all the knowledge, that they don't have all of the answers, and actually can turn around and say, do you know what? I don't know that, but I'm going to go and find out, and say, just put up your hands. Because on this app, by the way, I've been in so many rooms where people ask questions and they're like, why not turn around and say you don't know? Who knows everything about, who's the most prominent podcaster in the world, for instance? Who knows everything about podcasting? Who knows everything about social media? Who knows everything about social audio? I'd suggest it doesn't exist. We've probably all got lots of knowledge. And also I've learned to, as a way of reaching out for help, is to collaborate as well, because I'm in a place where I don't fear other people. Dominic, you may have more followers than me, or you may have this, that, and the other kind of thing. I'm like, well, actually, if we put our heads together, then surely we get, as a collective, we all progress. And from the loving place that I come from nowadays, I want to see everybody progress. It doesn't bother me to see somebody have more followers than me, or more downloads, or more of this, that, and other, because I'm not in a race with anybody. I'm only in a race with myself. I only want to better myself. So I love collaboration. I love collaboration on this app. I love people who are humble, show humility. But again, I don't mind people doing well. It's probably the people who try to hide it who are maybe not doing so well. I can be like, hey, I'm not doing so well. And that's okay. I'm going to learn. And the other thing as well, with what I heard about the little bit about paying it forward and this, that, and other, I've learned not to do things to get something. That's what I used to do. I'd be like, oh, people pleasing, it's called, which is a difficult trait and comes from difficulties. I used to be like, right, I've done something for you, so what are you going to do for me? Now I'm like, well, how about doing something because you want to do it? Because you might see that somebody, you have knowledge, and they might require that, and they may pay it forward to somebody else. On here, how I utilize my rooms to pay it forward is, there's no expectation of them. If they want to give, if they want to give a donation or whatever it is nowadays, then that's up to them. I don't push them to do that in rooms. I don't say, hey, I'm doing a room, so when you come in the room, you got to give me something. No, I've chosen to do it. So I'm not going to grumble about doing rooms, as I hear some people grumbling about doing rooms. Hey, if you don't want to do a room and you don't like it, don't do the room. Don't do a room out of expectation that it's for something, or be clear up front and say, hey, everybody, I'm doing this room because I want you to donate and I want you to give me something, of which most people don't appear, to do that. So the way I do it is, the expectation is that it may not come back to me, but if I help somebody else, or they get a bit of empowerment, or they get an uplift, they may go to another room and go, hey, that Simon who's currently appearing as the Queen helped me and gave me some encouragement. So they may go and do it to somebody else. So it may never come back to me. But if they're a good, decent person, decent human being, they'll be thankful and they will pay it forward to somebody else. As in, when I come into these rooms, Dominic, I always thank the people for running and starting the rooms. That's giving something back, rather than just taking and walking away. When I come into a room, by the way, I'm giving energy. I'm giving my time. So when we're all in here, we're all giving something, aren't we? But there are takers out there. And I remove takers. The people, what I mean is, you give, and they give very little, because those people are out there. And I've learned that they are not the correct people to be in my life. So I will rest on that. I've just got a brand new adult kick scooter, which is like one of these non-motorized things. I've been waiting it painted for 3 weeks. It's a new adventure for me, because I'm raising awareness of suicide, which is pertinent to me. So thank you for allowing me to speak, Dominic. Tom, thank you, because I think I follow you into this space, and I wish everybody a wonderful rest of life, because that's what I do when I finish these speaking in these rooms. Thank you.
Hey, Simon. Well, we appreciate you. Too, good luck on the scooter. But I wanted to ask you a serious question as advocate for suicide awareness, and you went down a path of that people that are kind of afraid to let people know they're not doing well. So what advice would you have for somebody, whether it's mentally, whether it's with your business, hey, your sales are down and you need help, that being afraid to ask for help can hit you in a lot of aspects of life. So from someone who's been there, what kind of advice would you give?
That's a very pertinent question, Dominic, and I'm going to say it's extremely hard, or for me, it's been an extremely long journey of looking inwards. Again, I think see a lot of people look externally, but I started to find peace and ask for help when I started to look inwards, and I realized that if the more that I loved myself, the more I would not see failure. Failure is a big word, isn't it? I trained in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, which is to do with words, and it's how I've reframed my brain from the trauma that's happened. And basically, I used to tell myself, for instance, oh, asking for help is a failure. Now what I say is asking for help is a joy. Asking for help is a loving, decent human being, because we all require, let's use require that help. So it does take, well, from a personal point of view, again, don't want to speak to other people, a lot of self-awareness to reframe what it looks like. So people are sitting there going, my business is failing, but I'm not going to ask for help. And then maybe they will complain when it happens. I'm like, well, how about you look at that and say, my business is failing, I am struggling. It will be a sign of strength as a business leader or a business person to turn around and ask for help. And also, the other way I look at it, Dominic, is it's empowering other people. Maybe people don't see it that way. If I go and ask for help, I've empowered somebody. Dominic, oh, I require your help. And you go, well, that's awesome, Simon. Thank you. So I see it as I'm empowering other people. What's the point of having friendships if we're not going to go and ask for help? What's the point? What's the point of working with people if we're not going to ask for help? But at the same time, my understanding is I don't wish to say to people, look, it's so easy. Just go and ask for help. I hear almost every single day. Well, if people could just ask for help, they'd all be asking. There'd be far less suicides than the one every 40 seconds, currently 800,000 per year. And there'd be less mental illness or mental health issues around the world. So for me, it may seem like a couple of words here and there, but words can change how things are looked at. So I see it as an absolute, triumph. I call it a triumph kind of thing. Simon, ask for help. That's okay. That's acceptable. You don't know it all. You don't have all the tools. And somebody else will go, thank you for asking me, Simon. Thank you for asking for help. Again, if it's the right person. So I've asked for help. I've gone to somebody. They want to help me. Surely that's a win-win situation. But thank you for asking such a pertinent.
Simon, thank you. You nailed it in reframing questions. I actually took a note. I'm thinking that thought of empowering others. Imagine we could ask a question, we could ask for help, and we're empowering somebody else. Love the thought. Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, social media. We do this every Wednesday. We got a room. You guys said get a room. We have a room. As you can see, there's a lot of cool people in this room, inspiring people, movers and shakers. So click up above, click below, follow them. Tom, what do you want to add there? Go on.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think you said we got a
said
room. I
cool
think you meant
people.
club.
Yeah, okay, you're right. I said cool people, and Tom instantly pulled his mic off and wanted to talk. Continue, Tom. Go on.
No, I was just going to say, because we've got the room, obviously, because that's where we are right now, right? But we've got a club also, so please join the club. It'll make sure that you get notified every week when this room starts up. We do this every week. We are very consistent. We aim for consistency. We try to be here every week to support this community, to provide a forum where people can come in, ask questions. We generally try to start with a topic, but often we wander off in different directions depending on what folks want or need to talk about. that week. So, when we tell people the floor is yours, we mean it. If you've got a question, if you've got a tip, if you've got something you want to share, if you want to tell a story, whatever the case may be, we firmly believe, both of us, that asking questions, sharing tips, and telling stories are all valuable things that we should all engage in, and that's one of the reasons why we hold this space every week for everyone here. So, just wanted to say that we're also live streaming as we typically do, right? So we're live right now on multiple channels on Facebook, multiple channels on YouTube. We're on Twitter, we're on Twitch. We're on LinkedIn, so other people can take part, can benefit from listening to this conversation and hearing all of the amazing tips and knowledge that you guys share every week in this space. So just wanted to add that, and make sure you. I'm going to take a page out of Julie's book here and just ask everyone to make sure you share the room to let people know on Clubhouse where you are. So that they can come in and benefit from this community the way all of us are right now. So I just wanted to throw that in. But thanks for calling me a cool person, Dom. I appreciate it.
I said cool, and you jumped in. So here's what I just want to go through a couple notes I had coming in here today. We were talking about asking for help. I had Instagram switching to video. The content on video is getting so much more traction on Instagram. Should you even post pictures anymore, which is weird because it's a posting. It's heyday was because it had the cool filters over Facebook. So now it's trying to compete with TikTok, turn into video. Interesting. Captions on TikTok. How can you do it easy? YouTube tags and asking for help. So those are a couple things that if you want to go down those, because I need to know about them. Okay, look, Julie has her new picture. Prop T has a new picture. Ibrahim has his bow tie on. We got the Queen. We got Monica, Ebenezer, Chantel. So, okay, we're coming to Julie first. You heard what we're talking about, Julie. Do your lovely thing from Chicago. Go on.
Well, if we're talking about asking for help, thank you, Dom and Tom. It's the Dom and Tom show. So, guys, if you love Dom and Tom as much as I do, make sure you go down and share this room with the club. So, do I ask for help? I always ask for help. I was actually having a conversation with someone last night. I'm like, I cannot do this project or whatever it was alone, because it can be really isolating being an entrepreneur or a creative. You're starting a small business, and thinking you can do this alone in life, there's something. Is it a control factor? You don't want to give out control, or you don't want to share the funds. I mean, if anyone can help me now, just DM me or whatever, because I need help. I need help with my kids. I've got all these projects. I'm really into writing articles. And I actually, what was it, a few weeks ago, I used to have a full-time VA. I hired a new VA, and I'm just so excited once she's up and running. Guys, if you don't have a VA or someone to help you, or like a mentor, this is my biggest tip, I guess. If you're a small business owner, go to score.org. It's free. They partner you, if you're a small business owner, entrepreneur, whatever, they partner you with a mentor. So there's tons of volunteers. It's like the gold standard in business mentorship throughout the nation. And they match you with somebody that can guide you through the process. Don't be afraid. It's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength. So thanks, Dom and Tom. Anything I can do to add or help, I appreciate it.
Julie, thank you. And I'll give Score a shout out. When I used to be a restaurateur, I went through Score. It was connected with a university. They helped me get a government approved business plan for my restaurant.
And it's free, right, Dom?
Yeah, now I took it and lost $500,000.
Oh my God, that's not like what usually happens.
In authenticity, I'll tell you the truth. 3 years, I gave it my best, and then I was broke. I lost a house. I lost a car. So you don't always
not win. Because of Score, though.
No, Score was great. Score taught me a lot. I went off on my own. They probably told me don't do what I was doing. So let's continue around here. Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. And then we have a camera, we have a microphone, we have some books because we are fantastic there. Okay. Prof T, I'm liking this new picture. It's like digital Prof T. She's got the grids behind her. Prof T, we're talking about asking for help. I see you blowing it up out there, by the way, too. You're killing. So go on, Prof T.
Good morning, everybody. Hello, it's Teresa Agustinelli, otherwise known as Prof T from Philly, where guess what? It's a little chilly this morning. I had to put my little hoodie on. I'm glad to be here, folks. I love this room. I haven't been on in a minute, but this is definitely a room you want to be on if you want to walk away with a takeaway. So I love what you're talking about, and I'm just going to piggyback, Julie, you talked about SCORE. So funny because still friends with someone that I met through SCORE when I joined my local chamber of commerce in where I live here in the Delaware County area. And I'm still friends with him today. I joined it almost 20 years ago. And the first person I made an appointment with was this person that was from our local SCORE organization associated with our chamber. Still friends with him today. Shout out to my friend Jean. And just actually talked with him last night. So SCORE definitely helps put your foot in the right direction. As far as asking for help, I think I'll pop in there because that's where I came in when Simon was talking. Yeah, I am a big believer in asking for help when it comes to business, because this is what I learned. Two things. I know what I cannot do, and I know what I don't like to do. So it's important to find somebody who likes to do what you don't like to do and can do what you can't do. And I would say this, when asking for help, sometimes, folks, this is where lots of people may disagree, but you gotta pay people sometimes. Everything isn't for free. And always remember that you get what you pay for. So sometimes it does cost money to elevate to the next level in your business or career or in your life. Just like everything else, in order to get ahead, you've got to think ahead and you've got to be around people that are where you want to be. And as far as reaching out for help mentally, well, that's what I do. The grid system is my book. That's why the new pic there has the grid behind me. Thank you, Julie, Julie is someone who I'm going to give a shout out to her wisdom, her craft, and her ability to know exactly what you need. So thank you for allowing me to be one of your clients. And as far as asking for help, and I'll land my plane with this, or park my Harley, as I used to say. Mentally speaking, a lot of people don't ask for help when they're hurting because they're hurting so bad they just sometimes can't. And I get a lot of parents calling me and a lot of team leaders and employers, and they're saying, I'm worried about this person who appears to be suicidal. And this is what's so crazy, you guys. Sometimes a parent will say, is my child just seeking attention? Is this an attention getting maneuver? And I say, it doesn't matter what you think. If somebody's talking about suicide, don't be afraid to have the conversation. It doesn't mean we put them in a psychiatric unit, which is what most people fear, so they don't reach out. It means having the conversation, destigmatizing the mental health. And secondly, I will tell you this. There are times, and I've lost loved ones to suicide, and I can tell you that sometimes there is nothing you can do or say. It just is something that is within the person, and they're not able to get past it. So always have the conversation. Don't be afraid of the word. Don't be afraid of somebody who doesn't look right, doesn't sound right. If it doesn't feel right, something is wrong. So thank you. Just going to share that. Always ask for help, professionally, personally. Thank you. Prof T, over to you, sir. Thank you, guys.
Prof T, thank you. Tom brought up this subject about asking for help, and it's amazing how important it is in all aspects of life. And so, hey, maybe we leave this room today at some point and we help one person because we had this conversation. It's okay to ask for help. So let's keep it rolling along. We got Tom, we got Carrie, we got Charles 222, Joyce, Dr. Tachi, my man Brian P. Swift. Check out his show in Chicago. Julie, Prof T with the new book. Julie with Media Casters. Now the best dressed in the room. Sorry, it's close. We got Ebenezer. He's got a tie on, but Ibrahim's got the bow tie. So I'm going bow tie. Dr. Tachi has the best hat. Although the Queen has a beautiful crown. Tom's looking at me with his Talex hat, but Dr. Tachi's hat is a step up from a ball cap. Ibrahim, you hear what we're talking about here? So we're talking about hats. Earlier, I tried to get in a conversation about the waves in Florida. It was crickets. Nobody cared about the waves in Florida. So, Ibrahim, please jump in, steer us in the right direction. What do you got?
Thank you, Dominic. You just never stop cracking me up with that introduction. So it's a very important topic, and I do appreciate all that has been shared. Interestingly, I was having this discussion with my wife Joy earlier this morning about asking for help, and I was just sharing some tips with her. So good timing here. Yes, one of the things that I do when it comes to asking for help, especially if it's not immediately, I identify the people that I think would be helpful to me at some point in my journey. And I try to establish a very good relationship with them. Excellent relationship. Sometimes years of relationship. And during that time, I ask myself or I ask them, how can I be of value to them? Or if I see us an opportunity where I can be of value to them, whether it's volunteering to help with a program that they have, whatever it is, I try to give value first. Again, it goes to what similar to what Prof T mentioned, you've got to think ahead, as she was sharing just now. And so I think it's critical thinking ahead, especially if you identify that this person or these persons might be of value to me. Maybe I'm switching career now. I'm trying to explore what that looks like. But this person has excelled, they have thrived in the career that I'm trying to transition into. And you already have like a very basic relationship. Try to strengthen that relationship, try to add value to them, and then at the point in time when you need help and you're very clear about your ask, they're more likely to be happy to help you out and maybe even exceed your expectations. Now, the other thing, as I was hearing Tom share, and one thing came to mind about if somebody who is in a field slightly different from mine and they're all the way up there and they give me help, what can I give in return? So the thing that came to mind is that I may not have something to give in return in terms of doing something for them, but what came to mind is that what what about identify what that person's greatest strength is, or what they do, and compliment, because people love compliments. And they may not always remember what you say, but they will remember how you make them feel, especially about an area of strength or something that they thrive in. And just those thoughts, or even maybe even before asking for help, right? Because asking them for help, you're probably going to tell them why that they're great in this particular area, and you believe that they can be of value to you based on your ask, and people feel good about that and they're happy to help. So that's one thing that came to mind to share there. And then in other cases, the third thing that I wanted to mention, we touches, I do appreciate Brian share earlier about that. it's okay to ask for help, but I may not always have something to give in return, and that's okay. Sometime down the line, maybe I would have something down the line to give in return, but it's okay to ask for help and not necessarily think about giving back in return immediately. So those are the three things I wanted to share. Hope that adds value. Thank you so much. I yield back the mic.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Really appreciate you sharing that and sharing your insight. And yeah, it was something like it came up to me yesterday. This idea of asking for help was something I was thinking about yesterday. I texted Dominick about it and suggested it as something we should talk about in the room today. He said it's something that he struggled with also. I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially in the entrepreneurial space. There is this sort of here's what I know that I have to ask for help. I know I don't know everything. I completely understand and am happy to ask for help in areas where I have no experience or expertise, right? I think the place where I actually struggle with asking for help is in my own field, right? Is asking for sort of mentorship in my own field. That's where I actually struggle a little bit. And, it's one of those things that I know that I got it wrong when I started sort of my entrepreneurial journey, and professionally even before that. I got it wrong. I thought I was under the misperception that being an entrepreneur meant that you had to figure out how to do everything, right? That you had to know how to do every aspect of your business, and how can you how can you sorry, I just got distracted for a second. But how can you possibly know everything that you need to know to run a business, right? You can't. And so I thought that that's what being an entrepreneur meant. And what I realized was that the key differentiator, the thing that separates successful entrepreneurs from those who aren't successful, is that successful entrepreneurs ask for help, and those that aren't successful, those that fail, often don't. Right. And so that's why I think it was a pertinent topic in my mind and something I wanted to talk about. So I appreciate you sharing that, Ibrahim, because I think it's something that a lot of people, especially in the entrepreneurial space, and I think a lot of the folks in this room fall into kind of that category, or entrepreneurs to some extent or another. It's something we all kind of struggle with is how and when, and when is it appropriate to ask for help. So thanks for that.
Tom,
Go ahead, Dom.
I want to throw this back to you. When we're swimming upstream, sometimes we're asking for help. Sometimes our plates are so full, we need to maybe ask or pay for help. Is there a point in the paying for help that it's time to pay for help? So as marketers and business people, how do we know when to pay for help in a certain situation?
I mean, I think that's an easier one for me. I think, like, how do you pay for help, right? Because what I'm talking about is like, how do you ask for help with like the intangibles, right? The sort of the strategy, the process, like the things that you can't really like put your finger on when you're asking for like, and when I'm talking about asking for help, I'm specifically talking about like asking for like really asking for mentorship, right? From somebody who's more accomplished in the sort of same career path. When it comes to things that you don't have experience with, or don't have expertise, or don't know how to do, like, to me, like, those are the things you pay for. And like the way I think of that is, I ask for that kind of help, or I spend money on help the same way I would if my car broke down. I would take it to a mechanic, right? If my plumbing started leaking, I would call a plumber.
But when do you put air in your own tires?
Sure.
I want to know. I want to know how anybody in this room knows when to not do it themselves and ask. Like some people change their own oil. I don't even know where my oil is on my car. So yeah, I know where the dipstick is, but go. So that's a push back on you. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess, where do you draw the line? Like, I think you have to, in a business context, you have to think about, you have to make sure you're valuing your time, right? So I think you have to think about, like, what are the costs associated with you trying to do it on your own, and then weigh that against the cost of paying someone else to do it, right? So, like, what is your time worth? And that's another thing that a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, a trap that a lot of entrepreneurs fall into is, uh, we don't always value our time appropriately, right? So, like, what is your time worth? And what your time is worth is what clients pay for your time, right? It's not what you think it's worth, it's what the market thinks it's worth, right? So, what do clients pay for your time? That's how you value your time, right? And maybe, you know, uh, there's also an argument that a lot of entrepreneurs undervalue their time, but that's a different conversation. But, what the market bears, that's what your time is worth, right? So if your time is worth, just for the sake of round numbers, $100 an hour, how many hours is it going to take you to figure out, if you don't already know how to do it, right? How many hours is it going to take you to figure out how to change the oil on your car, right? Versus how long would it take if you took it to like an oil change place, right? If the oil change place guarantees that they'll get you out in 20 minutes or less, right? And you round that up, say it's a half an hour round trip, right? Is it worth the $50 of your time it would cost, like that it would, the equivalency, right? Is it worth that $50, or is it worth, say, 3 hours it would take you to do it on your own, right? Is it worth $300, or is it worth spending the $50 that you spent to go get your oil changed, or $60, whatever the cost is, right? Like, which one is more expensive? I mean, and when you do it, I think when you look at it that way, if you value your time appropriately, it's pretty obvious. Like, if it's going to take you about 3 hours to figure out how to change your own oil, but you could get it done by a professional in a half an hour for $100. I mean, which one's less expensive? Which is the better way to spend your time / money, right? To devote resources. It's a pretty obvious choice, I think. But often I think people don't think of it that way, right? They don't take the couple of seconds to think, like, okay, what are the actual costs in both, like, cash, the hard costs, and the soft costs in man hours, right? What is that time worth too? So that's kind of how I would approach it.
Okay, Dr. Tachi, I saw you flash off, and then we're going to hit Monica. So, Dr. Tachi, did you have a thought on that? You want to argue? Argue. If you want to argue with Tom. I appreciate you too much.
No, I really don't want to argue. I think at the point when it comes to a point where we're two things, where clearly it's wasting time to do it, then you need to ask for help. And I don't mean wasting time in a bad way, but it takes more time than for somebody else who actually knows what it is, even if it is in your field. Because there are a lot of things that are in our field that we're not necessarily very adept at, that somebody else could do better. So simply because it's something like, for example, say you are in our field in media, say you're a great camera person or a great DP, but you can't stand editing. You can edit, but you don't feel like it, and it will take you longer. In that case, it's probably best to get someone who editing is their thing. They love it. They can do it quickly, because you can't do it or don't want to do it, even if it is in your field. So I think in that case, it's best to ask for help. And just the second thing, I've already said it, sometimes you don't feel like doing it. Sometimes there's something that I don't want to do this. Let me get somebody else to do. You can do it perfectly fine yourself or well enough, but you don't feel like doing it. And if it takes you out of the space where you're productive, then if you can, then maybe it's best to hand it off to someone else. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Dr. Tachi. I remember when I tried to format, this is back in the day, I tried to format an ebook, and as a publisher, we do hundreds of books. I tried to format an ebook. It took me like 40 hours. I had no clue, and it was the ugliest looking thing ever. And then I, of course, used the people that know what they're doing after realizing what a waste. I sucked at it, and now they do it beautifully fast. Okay, Monica, you are up. Clubhouse, publishing, podcasting, and social media. Tom, by the way, while we meet Monica, I want you to check out the comments there and see if we missed any comments that we need to discuss. Monica, become your own boss podcast. I feel you. What do you got for us, Monica?
Hey guys, ladies and gents. Well, the topic around asking for help, that was something that I actually had to learn because I was raised by two very strong Black women who raised their own kids on their own, and as single moms, they didn't ask for help. My mom never even asked my father for child support. And so me asking for help was very difficult as I grew up, but I did find if it was a teacher, I knew they were getting paid to help me, so I'd ask for help. But when it came to after I had my first child, that is when I realized I cannot do this by myself. I mean, my husband's around, but I'm talking about my home life and my business life. I just couldn't do it all. So I had to ask for home help. I had to hire home help, meaning not just once a week coming in cleaning, but someone to help me fold clothes, put things away, because I wanted to spend time with my kiddos. So I did have to ask for help, pay for help. And just like someone else mentioned, valuing your time and figuring out that, I can make, $250 an hour versus paying someone $20, $25 an hour to do these tasks is much more advantageous for me to spend my time on the $250 an hour task. So paying for help has definitely become a big part of my lifestyle. Just the other day, I was thinking I needed to create a landing page. And of course, I could sit down and I could figure it out on my Wix website, how to build a landing page. But instead, I reached out to someone on Fiverr. I posted a job, got a girl to do it for $100, and it looks great. So I'm much better at asking for help now around most things. And I'm only going to continue to do it. And Tom, I was thinking about what you were saying as far as the person you would like to mentor you. I'm curious to know, is it possible for that person to mentor you without it being a formal thing? Like being in his presence or her presence, being in the same space. Is that a possibility versus it being so formalized, like, hey, will you mentor me? I was just kind of thinking about that for you. Because I've tried to get better about surrounding myself with just I don't want to say the right people, but surrounding myself with people that can help enhance my knowledge around subjects. And that's it for me. I'll close my mic.
To answer your question, Monica, no, physical proximity is not necessarily a viable, like sort of easy to accomplish option. So it would have to be, I would have to directly reach out and specifically say, hey, would love your help with something, or would love the opportunity to pick your brain. I know you guys have been successful at this on a bigger scale than I am looking to accomplish right now. Would love to sort of have a conversation and learn about how you guys have approached this and tell you about sort of my strategy and get your feedback on it. Right. Like that's kind of how I have to do it, because being in the same space, like we're never going to run into each other. If I don't reach out and ask for a meeting, there's almost a 0% chance that we're going to run into each other anytime soon. So I hope that answers. Yeah.
Yeah, that clarified that. I was going to say, and I can't remember the details in his book, but Alex Hormozi talks about how he kind of have found mentors in his book, 100 Million Offers or $100 million offers. So maybe check that part of his book out, because he talks about kind of that all reciprocity and how he puts himself out there to the person. And I know you mentioned earlier, you don't really know what you can help them yet, but maybe that book will give you some ideas. I'm not sure, but I just wanted to share that with you too.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And Dominick keeps making like smiling and nodding every time. There's a few times people have mentioned reciprocity, and he knows that I like to talk about the rule of reciprocation. So yeah, he keeps nodding every time somebody says reciprocity. But yeah, I 100% agree that the good you put out in the world will come back to you 100%, because that's actually how society and culture are designed to work. It's something we're taught from a very young age, and we carry through our lives. So yeah, it is kind of the unwritten rule of civilized society is to follow the rule of reciprocation. So I 100% agree. Thank you.
Tom, and I don't want you to feel like we're picking on you, because this is a subject that all of us struggle with, that asking for help, asking for this. A lot of times, like let's say in the nonprofit world, if I'm doing something, sometimes I won't ask somebody, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, I didn't know you needed this. I would have cut you a check. Why didn't you ask?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't want to hit you up about it." I get that. I get that in my life so many times. "Oh, why didn't you say something?" I didn't. And this is always my answer. "Well, I didn't know. I didn't want to bother you." So that I don't know how to feel comfortable. Not like I always think I'm bothering them, but they're like, "Oh, I get that. Oh, I would have done it. Yeah, call me. Yeah, anytime. I'll meet you. I'll drive you. I'll take you. Use my boat. Whatever it is that people are like, here," and I would have never asked, and they're like, "Here, take it." So I don't know how to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. So if anybody wants to go down that path of getting getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, go on, Tom.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, first of all, I don't feel picked on at all. I asked this question because I needed help with asking for help. And so I specifically brought it up as a topic as something I could benefit from. And so I'm benefiting tremendously from this conversation, for sure. And the other thing too, is like to kind of take a step back, and look at it from even a slightly higher level perspective. I always get more out of this room than I feel like I put into it. Right. I always feel like I come away from this space every week having benefited more from it than is reasonable or justified. So like I never feel like I'm getting picked on, or I'm happy to be vulnerable in this space. I'm also like, I kind of wear my heart on my sleeve, and I'm not super shy about who I am or how I do things, or any of that kind of stuff. So I'm happy to be the sort of subject of conversation if it benefits other people in the space. So definitely don't feel picked on. If and always would encourage people, if you have a good idea and you think I'm doing something wrong or approaching something, if you have a better way to approach something, like share it, let me know. Like I'm good with accepting help. I'm just not great at asking for it, for what that's worth.
If anybody has any tips for us, speak now. You are always welcome to flash away and jump in. We appreciate you. Like Tom's saying, we don't have these conversations unless you guys come in and ask questions or bring in your comments, bring in your tips and things like that. And I'm like, I really, like Tom's saying, I have a whole page of stuff written down, like Julie saying score.org and things like that. So, okay, Ebenezer, man, this guy has a nice smile. Ebenezer, you hear what we're talking about? It is all on. I look at these profile pictures. If anybody's streaming and doesn't know why I randomly talk about people, it's because I push on their little face, their thumbnail picture, and then I look at their bios. So you see me getting real close. Evaluate, educate, empower, helping you live a life that Jesus died to give. Okay, Ebenezer, with the good smile, man. Give us a tip, ask a question. You know what we're talking about. Go on.
Hi Dom, hi Tom, hi Almost. I just popped into the room because I'm planning to start podcasting. and I'm into every room that says podcasting. So I just popped in the room, and the conversation asked for help. Great. Thanks everybody for all the contribution and values you contributed. Thank you so much. Uh, ask for help. I ask for help every time because I know I'm not the smartest in the room. It gives me a self awareness, and I assess my life every month in every area of my life, be it relationship, my friends, family, business, my faith, everything. I always write my day accomplishments, learning. So it's a process that I maintain. So I constantly ask for help, and people who ask for is always above me, like they accomplished something in the personal life or professional life or faith life or whatever it is, and it gives me self awareness who I am, where I am, and where I'm heading, and I always make sure I invest in the next generation. I mostly I speak in faith-based areas, so people when invest in me, it's not gonna go waste. It's just not like I get it, so it's with me. Uh, it's they know it's gonna go to the next generation. So I lead. I tell people in the church that say, hey, you know what? You need to get more involvement in the church because you can transfer that skills that you learn in the church outside in the marketplace. So I bridge business and faith, basically church crowd, to learn the skills that is required in the marketplace for their lives to learn from the church, ask. There are a lot of people in the church that ready to help, on the free times, hang out with the boys, and some like we have a couple who's I mean husband wife team, so they work with girls. So asking for help to me is like mandatory. Without that, I cannot live. I cannot move on because I need to know myself better, which means I need to be aware of who I am, what I can do, what I don't know, and who's there to help me, and should I pay for it? Uh, I mean, paying for it, like I generally don't go for it because I have people who's ready to do it for me in the church community. So hey,
Ebenezer,
hey, come here.
Ebenezer,
Yeah.
here's what we're gonna do for you right now. This is my promise from this room right now. Ebenezer, he's doing a lot of stuff. He's starting a podcast. So Brian, Dr. Tachi, Carrie, Monica, Tom, from each of you, one tip for somebody starting out a podcast. So right off the cuff, what do you got? So I'm going to go around this and so Ebenezer leaves this room getting some knowledge. So Brian, what do you got for us? One tip for Ebenezer. He's starting a podcast.
I would say don't worry about the podcast being perfect and having to go back and clean them all up. I think it makes them more authentic when they're not all cleaned up. I'm complete.
Good stuff. Dr. Tachi, does Dr. Tachi have a tip for a podcaster?
I do. Plan your topics because you tend to things tend to go by the wayside sometimes if you just want to get on and just do it. So I would say plan out your topics and plan them out for several shows, and that can definitely help with your success.
Dr. Tachi, I want to tell you. So we do this Bikes and Hikes. We do it for a local TV channel, and then they air it on YouTube. Over the winter, we were going to explore and look for waterfalls. That was the premise. That was our plan. But other than looking for waterfalls, we had no plan. So we didn't have any content. We didn't have an idea of what we were going to talk about. And instead, we went out in the woods for 6 hours and couldn't even put out a episode because our plan was weak. So I follow up on what Dr. Tachi says. Carrie, do you have one tip for a podcaster?
Sure. Don't be afraid to ask. And the ask isn't about you. If you have a show that has a solution to people's problems or pain, then you can reframe that ask in your mind by saying, I owe it to my listeners to ask this person that I really want because it can benefit everyone who tunes into my show. So don't be afraid to ask and get clear about why you're asking. And it really doesn't have anything to do with you. So that's my tip. Thanks.
You guys are fabulous. Monica, then Tom, and if anybody else wants to flash, go on. Monica, do you have a tip for somebody starting down the road of podcasting? All right, we got a 3, 2, 1. We're going to go to Tom.
So yeah, I got two to piggyback on what Carrie was just saying. Just remember that your podcast ultimately is about your audience, right? It's about providing value to your audience. So just have that in the back of your mind as you draft your topics and follow that great advice from Dr. Tachi. And then the other thing is to not get caught up with trying to be perfect. A lot of people, when they start out with creating content, get caught up in this notion of trying to present a perfect um, face to their audience and to the world, right? So don't get caught up in that. Be fair to yourself about the comparisons you make. So if you're going to compare your podcast and hold it up against someone else's podcast, make sure you're holding it up against someone else who is also new to podcasting, right? Don't hold it up against somebody who's been podcasting for 10 years. Hold it up against somebody else who's at the same point in their podcasting career as you are, if you're going to make comparisons. And along those lines, just whatever you do, stay away from over editing. There will be a tendency for a lot of people when they start a podcast, again, in this pursuit of perfection, to remove every single pause, to remove every single filler word, to make sure that it's as polished and smooth as it can possibly be. And ultimately, it ends up taking all the personality out of it. If you don't include any of the ums or uhs or pauses, right, those things that make our speech unique and help give the audience a sense of who we are as a human being and humanize us to the audience, then people are less likely to listen and gain the value that you're trying to provide to them. So be you and provide the audience with value, and I think you'll do well.
Beautiful. Thanks. Hope that helps, Ebenezer. You are appreciated. Thanks for being here. Okay, let's go to Sion. Sion, that's how I'm going to say it. We met Sion before.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Sion, also known as Sion the Poet, and I'm a podcaster. I've been podcasting for since 2020, beginning of the pandemic. And as far like, there's a couple of things I just want to touch on. As far as the asking for help, like it's really been helpful, and it's for me. It's always been hard as a person asking for help with the fear of just the rejection. And I think, like, working with other people, and working with my wife and having her taking more of a central role as far as with the podcast and the planning and so on, that's been extremely helpful. And one of the things that we can't forget, one tip that we cannot forget, is just to have fun with it. To have fun with it. Like, just remember why you created the podcast, and generally, you want to have fun. Like, if your audience isn't hearing like you're enjoying yourself or you're enjoying the conversation, that's always gonna bleed through. And just as everyone says, you don't have to be perfect. I've actually, as the more experience I've gotten more crisp with my questioning, and I've done a lot of editing less. I've actually been editing a lot less than I've had to do it, because I said, okay, let's just make sure, the sound sounds good, and do all of that stuff ahead of time. And the more planning you do, the less post production you got to do. And just, like, don't worry if you don't have everything perfect all the time. One thing that I have that I would actually want a little bit of advice for is, there's a thing actually I was planning on talking about mental health on my poetry creative podcast. So it was interesting that the first thing I heard was from Simon was about mental health. So that was awesome. And one of the things that we find on social media, especially when you're starting out, and I have that problem too, so maybe I can get some help, get some answers, is this cloud phobia. And I call it that, like a sort of clout phobia. You see someone and you're like, oh my gosh, this person would be excellent for my show, or I'd love to talk to this person. But, like, I'm just starting out, or I maybe recently started out, and I see this person has like 11,000 followers. And while they may be interested in talking to you, you're a little bit, gun shy as far as asking somebody, because you're like, okay, well, this person is a more popular person than me. What do I have to offer them aside from my platform that they can't get for themselves? And so that's one of the things that I'm at least trying to overcome, because I've come across poets and artists and that I want to approach. I'm like, okay, well, I may not have that level of fame or level of clout, so I don't even ask. So that's kind of where I'm at as far as asking.
Cloudophobia, Sion. That's interesting. And anybody have any feedback on cloudophobia? I'm interested to hear what the group has to say. Gary,
I
go
can.
on.
I'd love to weigh in on this. So, I spent my career photographing celebrities, and they are people who put pants on one leg at a time, just like us, and they have better clothes and handlers. But I'll tell you, it's isolating. And I know a lot of wealthy people who are very unhappy. So we have this opinion about other people. And a lot of these people who you think are unattainable would actually love to be a part of your show because people don't ask. And two things are going to happen. They're going to say yes or no. So if they say no, they're not supposed to come on your show, and that's okay. But to be paralyzed and not in fear and not do anything, you're just as worthy as somebody else. We all have talent. So I think it's really important to look at everyone as people, and you'd be surprised how many people would say yes. So that's my share.
Carrie, great points. And Sion, I think a lot of wise marketers, as you swim upstream, I would think their companies, their handlers, as Carrie said, are putting into their timeline some smaller shows as well. They don't want to, everybody wants Oprah, in Good Morning America, but you'll hear Gary Vee talk about doing the smaller, Gary Vaynerchuk, he talks a lot about doing the smaller shows and getting the ones and twos and things like that. So I think that some of those larger guys, like Carrie said, they're putting their pants on one leg at a time too, and they also see the value in being grassroots. So, Ibrahim, did you want to add something there? Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. I just wanted to share two things with you, or yeah, two main things. One is believe in yourself, and two, believe in your purpose. And like Carrie mentioned, if you ask, you're gonna get one of two answers, yes or no. And I say believe in yourself and believe in your purpose because if you look at my journey, I was a refugee in West Africa when I believed in myself that I had a purpose to write. I believed that I would set up my own website and start interviewing people who make a difference. And all I did was reach out and ask. Sometimes the answer was no, and that's okay. Many times the answer was yes. And if you look at my profile, you see some of the people that I have interviewed. And over the years, it's as a result of doing just that, believing in myself, believing in my purpose, and just reaching out and asking. You'll be amazed at what's possible when you have the affirmation within yourself that it's going to work out for you and believing that it will even before it manifests. And then once it starts to manifest, you are unstoppable. So you've got greatness, keep pushing forward. You've got this. Thank you.
Sion, what do you think about those tips?
I mean, I feel they are completely spot on, and like a lot of times, there's a thing that I heard Steve Harvey say. He said, success is not like how far you've come, how far you are, because there's always going to be somebody further, but like in relation to how far you've come from. And even when I listen to old episodes, and so on. I said, man, I've definitely gotten better at interviewing and so on. So it's building that confidence in me. And yeah, Dominic, we met a long time ago, in this very room, I believe. So thank you very much for sharing your platform and your audience with me as well. And I look forward to hearing from you. The name of my podcast is Poetry Talks. So if anyone is interested, do take a listen. I interview poets and artists and other creatives and stuff about just the poetry in their art. So thank you very much. All of that was very helpful. I'm following all the mods that I have not been following already. So thank you very much again.
Thank you, Sion. I'm in. I'm gonna DM you. I want on. I love to talk. Love to talk art. Let's do this. Not that he wants me, but I'll make the ask. Okay, Chantel, what do you got for us? Chantel, Heather, and our main man Kyle. Chantel. Let's see here. I feel like
Hey, can you hear me?
self-love specialist. Okay, we need self-love. We all need it. Tell us, teach us. Go on, Chantel.
Hey, everyone. I am Chantel Branch. I am the self-love specialist. I teach women how to ditch their stinking thinking and learn to define love through my transformation. I am the host of the Identity of a Woman podcast, where we uncover the denials and the realities of trauma to help women progress through the healing journey. And so my share today is, as a mama of four and a wife, entrepreneur. I was recently working a full time 9 to 5 job, and I'm also the founder of my Fearless Future Project, where we host teen mentorship workshops inside of high schools to help teens understand healthy and unhealthy relationships. And so I definitely experienced burnout. It's probably for the last 8 years. And it was just a really bad cycle that I was caught in. And I realized that I was always relying on my default settings. And it was just like, oh, and I had this thing in my head, and I don't know where the term came from, but it was like super mom. And I really, really wanted to be a super mom. And I went after that. Like I set a goal of a super mom, and I went after that. And whatever that looked like, being the best mom, being the best wife, making sure kids are great and dropping them off and picking them up and trying to do everything for everyone. And I lost myself. And I'm still trying to run a business. I'm still trying to work a job. And just as of the last 3 years, I've really, really been trying to just hone in and focus on me and realize, what does Chantel like? What does she need? How can she operate at her best self and still feel good about herself? How can she be her best and still serve others? But taking that moment and realizing that I really don't um, have to serve everybody so great. I don't have to be 100% for everybody, but how about me really being 100% for me? And so just within this last year, it's been really hard to say no to my husband and say no to the children and really just turn that mirror, just really focus on me. And so while it's been a struggle and a journey, um, I definitely love my VA. She is amazing. Right now, the thing that's going to help me with my podcast and my business is to build a team. And so, um, I guess getting past that fear of taking that next step and starting to reach out to agencies and really build my team, because we have a lot of projects and things coming up, but I really need a team to carry it out and make that vision a reality. So that's my share, is just being self-aware, tapping into that self-awareness, knowing what we need, getting that mentor, getting that counseling and that therapy, finding your support team, your support group. And for me, I definitely learned I don't have to be a super mom. I don't know why that term ever came out. And I am just ready to destroy that whole stinking thinking of being a super mom, because we don't have to be. And I don't really want to be. It's not attainable. So that's my share. Happy Wednesday.
We accept your happy Wednesday and thank you for all that you are doing out there. That the comment that wraps this room up, and we're not wrapping up yet. We got Heather and Kyle, but this self-awareness. we talked about asking for help today. We talked about when to know that you should pay for it, when to request it, but when do you need it? And this self-awareness is something that, hey, if we're a bit more self-aware, maybe we would understand that we were in need of these other things. So thank you for bringing that up. Let's meet. Okay, Heather with a unique profile picture. It looks like algorithms behind her. Codes. These looks like codes because I'm reading her bio now. Okay, I'm in. Let's see what I'm pushing the button. View full profile. Social media, WordPress, SEO, 15 years experience. TEDx speaker times 2. Well, impressive. TED Talk now live on YouTube. Search Heather Cox, TEDx Wilmington. Okay. Top Women in Business 2020 by Delaware Today. Most influential Delawareans. Okay. I go to Rehoboth sometimes. Heather, how am I doing here? Heather, you know what we're talking about now. Drop a tip, ask a question, and the floor is yours. Go on.
Thank you, Dominic. I'm like kind of blushing over here when people like read read my bio out loud. It's like it's still kind of like I don't know. I'm not used to that, right? But thanks for having me. Last time you invited me up, I was in here. I had a sick kid, and I also had COVID for like 2 weeks. So finally on the mend. But I've been listening to this conversation about podcasting and getting in front of the camera and asking for help, like all of these different touch points that I could go in on. But I do want to say, like, it's in regards to the podcasting, and I just wanted to give that one tip because you guys are talking about like when somebody starts out, and I'm actually starting out. Like, I am shifting away from the content creator side of things for my own personal brand. 2-3 years ago, I was on TikTok doing the dancing and the trends and the tips and the tricks. Putting my face on that camera, doing skits, the voiceover, it's the whole nine, right? Now that just doesn't feel genuine to me. So now I'm diving into this quote unquote podcasting world. And I don't think mine's going to be within the podcast framework. And the asking for help part resonated because while I'm setting this up, right, like the other day I just painted my wall like this dark gray color. The name of the color is Software, which I think is hilarious. And I've been setting up my space, and I had no clue about microphones at all. I didn't want to have the big radio looking one. I wanted to have a boom, like I want it as raw and authentic as possible. I had to ask help from my older sister. And that was like probably the hardest thing I could do, right? Because I am a very independent individual. So asking my older sister for help in regards to a microphone, I knew would like open up a can of worms. It'd be a very long conversation because my older sister is a singer, songwriter, and studio producer owner out in New Zealand. She owns a music recording studio named Mockingbird Studios. And she's been playing music and doing gigs and all of that stuff since the age of 15. She's turning 40 now. So that's 25 years in the game. And so for me to, she's tons of knowledge. So, we're talking about microphones, and I showed her this one, and she's like, no, because, mics break. And she was like, this is the ones that comics use up on stage. And like, so she sent me like all this stuff, and just asking for that help was difficult. But when you do ask for help from somebody, it actually kind of like bonds you a little more. It brings you closer together because you asked for help, they were willing to help, and it kind of brings you to this moment of like helping each other out and talking and communicating and bringing that relationship closer. So, it's funny that I'm starting this journey now, and I have been having to ask a lot of help, and you know I was born in the 80s, and my generation, I'm an elder millennial, and my generation, we don't like to ask for help. Like, my parents were of the school of thought, if you ask for help, like, it's a weakness. Like, you need to figure it out yourself. You need to bootstrap it. You need to get it done. Especially being a second generation entrepreneur, my mom, owning her own business for my entire life, 30, 40 years actually, and is in her second business now. I'm from that generation where asking for help is a weakness. So retraining your brain to ask for help and see it as a strength and as a way to connect with other people in the space, I think is a better way to frame it than it as a weakness. So I just wanted to touch on those points. So thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Heather. So I also was born in the 1900s, which is something that I heard someone say, a very young person say, not that long ago, and it instantly upset me because it made me feel very old. But it's technically true. We were born in the 1900s. I'm a little bit older than you. I'm not a millennial. I was born in the late 1970s. I don't even know what generation that makes me. Is that weird that I don't know what generation I am?
I think it's Gen X, I think.
Okay. Cool. But yeah, as a Gen Xer, I guess, I very much grew up with that same kind of mentality that like you figure it out, you problem solve, you figure out how to do it on your own. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I think, getting help can be challenging. One of the other things that I just wanted to react to or hit on from what you were talking about was how you said, when you started out on TikTok, you were doing a lot of the dances and kind of doing a lot of the trends. And we talked a lot of in this room a few weeks ago. And I think, was it Johnny? It might've been Johnny who said, once you start chasing trends, you're always going to be chasing trends, essentially, because trends are always changing. You're always going to be a little bit of a step behind if it's already trending when you start doing it. And you said you changed up what you were doing because it didn't feel authentic to you anymore. And I think that's a really important lesson for a lot of people is you don't have to be somebody else. Don't try to be somebody that you imagine other people want you to be. Be yourself. And, the difference between people who are, who perform really well in front of camera, or who are great on the radio, or who are great public speakers, or who are really good at being live on the radio or being on Clubhouse in a room like this. The difference between those people and the people that have a hard time with those things is a very simple thing. And Dominick actually mentioned it earlier, and it's about getting comfortable with discomfort. Right. And so for me, and I did a video about this, I kind of challenged everybody else in the room about a month ago to do a video on this. I talked about how I feel being on camera. Now, I've been in front of a camera for almost 2 hours straight this morning on this live stream, right? As has Dominick. And when I'm in front of a camera, it doesn't matter that I do this all the time, that I literally film myself every day, right? I am self-conscious every time there's a camera pointed at me. Every time there's a camera recording, I am self-conscious. The trick is that I've done it so many times at this point, for so long, and with such consistency, that I am comfortable being self-conscious. I am comfortable with that level of discomfort. Because I have made myself comfortable with that level of discomfort, it is okay for me to do it. And because I'm comfortable, I come across as who I am, right? As my authentic self. And so I would encourage you to do the same as you pursue this new foray into podcasting. Is just make sure that you're being relentlessly authentic, and you are being yourself, and just get comfortable with the discomfort. you'll get through. So congratulations and best of luck with that endeavor. I think last up for today, our friend Kyle is here. Kyle, we've been talking about asking for help all day today, and then I've actually got one quick question I'm going to pose to the folks that are still here before we go. But Kyle, the floor is yours. Share a tip, ask a question, tell us about how you ask for help. Take it away, my friend.
Tom, Dominick, rest of y'all, thank y'all for pinging me in. Thank y'all for inviting me up. Man, I love the ask for help, because when I started my podcast, I had no clue. Much like what Heather had to do with her older sister. Like, I had no clue what I was doing. My trailer was recorded on a voice memo on my phone and my AirPods. So, don't discredit small starts. And I had to ask for a lot of help. Like, hey, what platform should I host on? What topic should I do? How do I get guests? How do I get on other shows? How do I do this? How do I do that? And much like with being on camera, in the same way, us asking for help is getting comfortable allowing others to help us. And what I've learned over asking is, I heard a quote one time: every time we ask for help, we risk a yes. Are we willing to take the risk? A lot of times we're like, oh, you risk getting told no, but we have to look at the other side and go, we risk getting told yes, and getting the help that we need, and getting the answer of our question. And so I love this conversation, because I feel like most of my life has been going, hey, I'm going to commit to this and then figure out who has the answer and whose shoulders can I stand on. And, being even in these rooms, hearing how to promote and how to make my podcast all that it has been. I mean, when I first started coming in these rooms, I didn't have a podcast. Now we're 85 episodes in, and we just hit 11,000 downloads. And so I'm pumped for that. And that was all because of coming in rooms like this, asking advice from y'all. And so I'm really grateful for the times that I've been able to ask for help. And I appreciate all of y'all that I've been able to learn from over the last couple of years.
Kyle, man, thank you. I love Kyle's content. I'm always following him on Instagram, so seeing who he's standing next to. Who was that guy you're standing next to in the last picture, Kyle? He's tall.
Yeah, man, he's super tall. His name's Jeremy Finlay. And if y'all are familiar with Warrior and Garrett J. White, he was the CMO for Garrett for about 13 years, and so he does video documentaries for guys in the coaching, consulting, branding space. So he's done videos for Cardone and Sean Whalen, Garrett, obviously, for 13 years. And so I got to do a filming session with him for what we're building with Unleash the Champ.
Love it, man. Good stuff. So you'll see. I'm in. Once you guys are in my vortex, I am in your social media. I'm always following, seeing what Dr. Tachi and Carrie and Kyle and everybody's up to. So Ibrahim. So now I got to add Heather. See what Joyce is doing. But Tom, continue, man. You had a question I thought you were going to pose. So let me frame it, prepare you, and lay out the red carpet for this question.
I do. So this is a quick question, and I'm gonna ask for Dr. Tachi to respond first, and then we'll go around the horn and see who else, anybody else who wants to chime in can chime in. But this is my friend Chris Fraze, who's he's a dog behaviorist and trainer extraordinaire, who's always watching our live stream on Facebook every week. He asked this question in the comments there on Facebook, and so I wanted to make sure we got to it very quickly today. And essentially what he asked is, he's got a Patreon account, right? So he's got some content that's behind a paywall on Patreon. And he's got somebody that has joined his Patreon group, but is then essentially taking his content, repackaging it, and calling it their own, rebrands it, and basically just steals the message of the content. And he asked me, how do you deal with that? And so I'll share my response in the comments and what I put up on Facebook, and then I'm curious to hear Dr. Tachi and other folks' responses to this. Dom, your response as well. And what I said was, my short answer is, there's really nothing you can do about it, right? Because at the end of the day, it kind of falls to this idea that you can't control other people. You can only control how you react, right? And so in the short term, I kind of think there's not really anything you can do about it. And the way I would probably deal with it is I would actually probably create some content around the fact that somebody was kind of stealing my messages and taking my message and rebranding it as their own and not giving me credit. I would do some content about that. And I would essentially just talk about how that gives me the idea or points me in the direction that I must be doing something right. If somebody else thinks it's valuable enough to steal, that I must be on the right track. And then I would just keep moving forward. But I wouldn't go after them. I wouldn't try to stop them. I think I would just talk about how I feel about it and what my reaction is. So that was my thought. That was my gut reaction. But I'm curious to hear what other folks think. So, Dr. Tachi, how would you deal with content theft or messaging theft like that?
In a sense, you're right, because this happens all the time where people are stealing ideas and then repackaging them as their own. I think, and I agree, because I would definitely do something addressing that in general. But I also think that it's real theft audacity for you to pay for it and then think it's almost as if you think because you're paying for it now you own it or you have access to it. So I probably would say something to the person because it's not okay to steal other people's hard work. He took the time to sit there and put it together, and it's one thing to be inspired by that content and then do it yourself, but if it's really clear and obvious that this person is just usurping your content and not giving you credit for it, then I'm just talking about me, I would say something. I would do what you do, Tom, and actually do something about it. But then I would also address him and like, look, this post is about you. Because sometimes I think it's sometimes like with, and this person probably knows very well, but sometimes like with students, for example, they think it's okay to take the words of someone else and it's apparent that they're doing it and it's not. That's like plagiarism. So this amounts to the same thing. So confront them. That's what I would say. You don't have to do it in a public forum, but I would definitely do something.
Yeah, and if I know Chris, Chris is not shy about addressing people. In fact, he at one point in his life was a stand-up comedian and was sort of well known for in that world when he was pursuing that career before he started his family and decided that being on the road all the time wasn't conducive to family life. He wanted to be around for his wife and his kids. He was sort of well known for dealing with hecklers. So I don't think that Chris has not said something to this person. But he was sort of asking, I think, so he's probably said something directly to them. And I agree with you, Dr. Tachi. I think I probably also would address it generally, but then depending on the reaction I got or what my conversation had been like with that individual person, I also very likely would address them directly and say, this person is doing this. Right? Like, and say, this person is doing this. And that makes me think, if they're willing to do that, if they're willing to pay for my content and then try to pass it off as their own somewhere else, then I must be doing something right. So if you want to hear from the source, if you want to know what she thinks is so great that it's worth stealing, sign up for my Patreon.
I want in on this. This is
go.
This is
all
this
you,
is
man.
such
All
a good,
you.
it's such a good subject, and I'm going to go the opposite way on it. Not that I don't like the stealing and reusing and stuff like that, but Dr. Tachi is so unique. Somebody could copy her transcript verbatim, and it would never in a million years be as good as Dr. Tachi's. So that's because she's so unique, she's so original, she's got this spirit and stuff like this. So this copycat we have out there that is obviously flattered by your friend Chris, that's all they are, is a copycat. They're posing an imposter. So what I do in this situation, because is little old me when I see this stuff happen and I get the same message. I'll see somebody sharing like the next day using like almost like, well, sometimes images. Yeah, okay, I get that. I see it all the time. I'm like, why are you posting about Roberto Clemente? I live in Pittsburgh and you live in Wisconsin. Okay, I know that's my exact same image with your logo on it. Anyway, but because this happens all the time, where I'm saying here is I mute them, meaning I don't want to see it. I don't need to see it. I'm still going to do my thing. If they're going to copy it, copy all away, but I'm going to mute them and they aren't going to get into my, so the person that does it all the time, somebody will ask me, did you see so-and-so's stuff? It was just like yours. No, I didn't. And I expect that because I've seen it too many times. So I mute them. That's how I handle it. Go on. Thank you.
I was the other thing I was going to add. The other thing that just kind of popped into my head that I wanted to share on this too was that I think in addition to removing them, in the comments, some folks have said remove them from your Patreon. I think that's happened. I think they've like created new accounts and rejoined to try to get access to the content. So I think Chris has already done that. But I think the other thing too is that it's important to not get sort of pulled down right to their level, to not engage with or end up in sort of a feud with them on social media. So while I might address them specifically, I wouldn't engage in a back and forth with them on social media or on the internet. And in fact, the approach that I would probably try to take would be to sort of drown them with empathy, right, and kindness. And so I would, in response to them stealing my messaging, I would say, I'm sorry that you feel you have to do that. I'm sorry that you feel that that's the best route for you to take to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. If I can help you in any way find your own voice, please reach out. Right? Like I would sort of go the kill them with kindness route and drown them in empathy, and rather than ever getting pulled down or mired down into debate, because at the end of the day, no one's going to win out of that, right? You get into a public back and forth with somebody online, no one wins. They don't win, you don't win, and all they've done is brought you down to their level. So I think drown them with empathy, smother them with kindness, and address it. Like I think at the end of the day, the more authentic you can be, right, the better off you are. And so I would just address it. I would talk about it. I would talk about how it's flattering, that somebody thinks that I'm worth stealing from. Genuinely, I think that's kind of flattering. And I would talk about how I feel about it and not necessarily so much about their actions. Right. So that's the other thing I wanted to add. I don't know Dom, if you had anything else to add onto that.
No, I thought it might be
I
funny
do.
to take Sion, what if we took Tom's content all week long on all of our sites and just positioned it? Go on, Sion.
All you're
Yeah,
doing then is giving me more content ideas. That's all you're doing.
yeah. And there also comes like, I remember the first time something like this happened to me, and it wasn't really about, it was almost like stealing, but accusing me of stealing. This was before, you had like all the Patreons and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't even something I was doing for money, which was the funny thing. I had written a poem on Facebook and I had shared it publicly. And it was really just for a woman that I was involved with at the time I wrote this out. I was at the end of my college career. Anyway, long story short, somebody said that I stole their piece, and it's similar to something that they've had. Right now, fortunately enough, I know enough about derivative works and things like that I said, okay, well, you know, again, I started with yeah, I'm sorry you feel that way and everything like that. But they kept on going and they kept on escalating and so on. And, we'll take you to court and we'll call our lawyers and stuff like that. I said, you know what? Then see me in court. I said, because, and I said, because first of all, you would have to prove that, that I derived my work from your work, and I know you can't do that. So have a nice day. But I said, by all means, serve me with papers. They, they continue. They went off to the same normal name calling, threatening with physical violence and all that stuff. And I said, okay, and I just referred it to the police. I never heard from them again. And that was just the end of that, because nobody has time for that. No one has time for someone wanting to, steal your thing. But I do agree with what Dom said. You know, you can sing somebody's song, you can steal their content all you want, but you're not them. So you won't really be able to bring it off, you know. And that's really the long and short of it, but it does happen. And sometimes the person that steals from you may be a person that's more famous than you. You hear about that stuff in the music industry all the time. So the best thing you can do is, you know, is you try to kill them with kindness route, you try the calm your bluff route, and then if they really want to take you to court, just make sure you have evidence of your original work. And they'll just waste their money. You can even sue them for your legal fees back. That's just it. If they want to do that, most of these online people, they really don't have they really don't have it in them to actually go about any sort of real process. They just want to be online for the clout, to complain and steal and do whatever else they want to do.
Hey, Sion, thank you. And I like the wrap up as we wrap up the room. And you can always sue them. So good point. But hey, one, so thankful of everybody that comes here for 10 minutes, 1 minute, an hour, every other week, once a month. You've been here twice. You came 9 months ago and you were back today. Me and Tom are appreciative. This room does not happen without you guys. On that note, you can hear it. My voice is shot. I got nothing left except love for each of you. So I will let Tom take us out because he has a good voice like Sion. So Tom, you're up, my friend. Take us home.
Thanks, Dominic. Appreciate that. Yeah. So just want to echo that sentiment. Very much appreciate everyone who comes into this space every week, who is part of this community. You guys are the reason why we do this week in and week out. We really appreciate your participation, your time, and your wisdom that you share in this space. And speaking of that, I think one of the things that I'm taking away from today, a phrase, right? Something that I'm going to have rattling around in the back of my head was said earlier today in this room, that all you risk asking for help is a yes, right? So I'm just going to remember that as I put together that email and reach out and ask for that mentorship and ask for that help. That all I'm risking is them saying yes. And me actually getting the mentorship and the help that I need. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you for being a part of the space, as always. Thank you, Chris, for the question on Facebook. I hope we answered it well for you. And with that, I think, Dom, let's count them down, and we will see everybody next week. We're going to close it out in 3, 2, 1. Have a great week, everybody.